Welcome to the Tunbridge Wells Borough Council What We Do podcast collaboration special. I'm here with what I like to think of as the Take That of Tunbridge Wells Borough Council.
I'm Henry Saunders, I'm the Sustainability Manager.
Tim Stevens, Building and Property Manager.
Del Sanderson, Building Surveyor.
Stuart Clifton, Housing Services Manager.
Is anyone able to summarise what the project was?
Yeah, the starting point was that we had 4 empty properties, derelict properties in Crescent Road, and there was a desire to do something with those properties, looking at bringing them back into use for housing, and I think there was a few different kind of options being explored in relation to those properties becoming affordable homes, so social rented homes for households off our housing register, but also we had a need for temporary accommodation to meet homelessness demands, and at the same time looking at options for supporting households from Ukraine as part of the Homes for Ukraine scheme. So it was from a housing perspective looking at there are properties, we have a housing need, how can we bring those back into use to meet that ongoing housing need.
I think it's worth mentioning that in the same terrace of properties there are 3 other properties, and we'd previously done them up. It was one of the town squat spots, for want of a better word, and
We don't have any of those.
and you can edit that as you wish.
I'll leave it in. I've left in a lot worse.
Yeah, so the previous 3 properties had been divided into flats.
Yeah, they were part of a government programme called the Next Steps Accommodation Programme, which was a programme to provide homes for rough sleepers who had been brought off the streets as part of the Everyone In programme when COVID first hit. So it was the next step of moving those rough sleepers on into independent living and self-contained properties.
You guys as property people, what was your involvement?
What was our involvement?
Yeah, what did you do?
Okay, so if we're talking about the 30 to 32 Crescent Road, which was the previous project, we had 3 properties sitting empty. To get them back into use, it required significant works to the properties. The properties were largely as they were when they were originally built about 120, 130 years ago, and they weren't designed with the idea of adapting them into self-contained flats in mind. So we had to redesign the properties. We also had to, the whole number of checks, make sure they were suitable for accommodation. And in terms of getting an air source heat pump in there, before we could even do that, we had to do something called a heat loss calculation. This really involved assessing the fabric of the building, how well insulated it is, or how well insulated it was going to be at the end of the renovation works. Once the heat loss calculations came back, that gave us information about the type of air source heat pump which we could install, how much power it had, possible running costs. So knowing the condition of a building's envelope determines the kind of air source heat pump that you want to install.
Henry,
Yes.
air source heat pumps. What are those? What's that all about?
Air source heat pumps are a more environmentally friendly way of heating your home. They replace a traditional gas boiler and are effectively work like a reverse air conditioning unit in a slightly different way to gas boilers, in which gas boilers respond to demand very quickly. Air source heat pumps work best when they're providing a steady level of heating to your home. They do require a slightly different approach to heating your home. They run entirely off electricity. When that's combined with a fully decarbonised electricity grid or a renewable electricity tariff or supplier, it means that the heating of your home is fully net zero. It's a really good way of reducing your own personal emissions, and according to the Climate Change Committee is one of the 2 biggest things you can do personally to have an impact on your emissions and tackle climate change in the UK.
Okay, and we all want to know what the other one is.
Driving an electric vehicle.
Driving an electric vehicle. It's all about electricity these days.
It is. That's the government's and the Climate Change Committee's largest recommendation as to how we as a country are going to get rid of fossil fuels.
I want to switch to a horse, but apparently that's not sustainable. If people are retrofitting their own homes, is it the same process of like looking at the energy loss in the home before they could install a heat pump?
That would be a very, very sensible starting place. So they need to consider things like the glazing. Have you got double glazing? We're going to have secondary glazing, even treble glazing. Single glazing isn't so good if you want to install an air source heat pump. It's also the same with your wall insulation, loft insulation, any floor insulation. Basically get the building as well insulated as you can. The reason being, air source heat pumps, there are different types, but I think the more energy efficient types don't run hot. Your radiators are likely to be a constant tepid temperature. The heating is constant and minimal.
You have to make your house really efficient for it to work effectively. Like when my dad tells me not to put the windows down in the car when it's hot because he's got the air conditioning on.
Okay. Exactly that. You could tell your dad to turn the air conditioning off.
Yeah. It's all right. My current car that my partner has doesn't have air conditioning.
Okay.
What were the challenges of this project?
Apart from the client.
Apart from the
With this one, obviously any project like this, you've got to cover a lot of bases and you've got to make sure that the client's getting what they want. We've also got to make sure that the building contractor is delivering what we've specified, so that requires constant monitoring. In terms of air source heat pumps in a property like that, I think one of the big challenges is in older properties is getting the air source heat pump boilers inside the property. Often these are very large tanks. Getting them in can be a bit of a feat. It's easier in a property that's completely stripped out, but if you're putting one in your home, it would be useful to check that you can get it through the door and up the stairs. And obviously the biggest challenge in any project is making sure you get it in on time and on budget.
That was actually a question I did have, is how long from like the inception of the idea through to using the properties, how long is the timeline on something like that?
In the case of this project, the inception of the idea was probably in November 2023, and we achieved practical completion by the end of June 2024. So this one moved very quickly.
That is really quick, and trying to get residents to understand that like quick for us is not maybe what they would perceive as quick, but the amount of work that goes into these projects and different people involved. Stuart, what are the benefits for housing? How is the building used now?
So yeah, the benefits for housing. So we have now got 4 additional temporary accommodation properties within our portfolio of temporary accommodation. 2 of those properties are 3-bedroom homes and 2 are 4-bedroom homes, which we were lacking within our portfolio. We didn't have those larger homes, so it's meant that for our homeless families we have got more suitable homes to provide as temporary accommodation that meet the needs of those families. One of those properties was also developed to standards to be accessible for a household member that may need to use a wheelchair. So the property has got a downstairs wet room, lowered units within the kitchen, so it makes it more suitable for a household who may be wheelchair bound to live in a property. And that was something we didn't have a lot of provision within our temporary accommodation stock that we owned ourselves for temporary accommodation. So yeah, it's really helped meet that need, provide more suitable temporary accommodation homes for our homeless households.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. What are the benefits? I mean, you kind of talked about the benefits of air source heat pumps, but what are the like headline benefits of this project for sustainability purposes?
The biggest thing is just reduced energy consumption generally. Obviously, one of the biggest things you can do to decarbonise a property is to get away from gas consumption, which has been achieved by the installation of air source heat pumps, but the general energy efficiency improvement to the buildings will reduce electricity consumption and general energy requirement within the site, which will ultimately reduce emissions.
And you guys, what were the benefits of the project for you, other than the satisfaction of a job well done?
I think one of the benefits, as I see it, is that going forwards, I think properties in Crescent Road, in a way it sort of sets a standard for the level of sort of refurbishment we would like to achieve in our sort of stock of temporary accommodation. So I think for us it's a case of setting the bar and saying whenever we do a project we don't really want to do anything less.
It's the gold standard. Nice.
I'd say so.
How did you guys find working together on this project?
From my perspective, it worked really well. We met regularly, communicated well. It was very much a collaborative effort as well. There was at times we got together outside of the meetings to look at the design look at what we were wanting to achieve from the refurbishment. So in terms of the size of the property, having, as I mentioned, having one property adapted, very much kind of looking at that, working together in terms of what fittings were in the property and the layout. So yeah, it just worked really well in terms of how we communicated.
I think as we went along, there were certain concerns, certainly about the accessibility in one of the properties. So I think we sort of did maintain a constant dialogue on that to make sure that there were no unpleasant surprises for you.
Like the dead pigeons.
Oh yeah, like the dead pigeons, yeah.
Dead pigeons seem to be a thing that a lot of people in the council deal with. I know that there's always someone in facilities who's going off to scrape the dead pigeons off the roof.
Yeah, it was very crunchy walking around.
That's so gross.
From a sustainability perspective, and I mean this in the best possible way, I didn't actually have much to do with the project. Everything was being considered, from the outset in terms of, general sustainability, with the work that they did with the previous scheme, putting in air source heat pumps. The property team, were already considering a lot of this work, and I was just pulled in to, feed into a few little bits and bobs here and there, but a lot of the, the brunt of it was delivered and pushed forward by the property team, which is fantastic.
I didn't know, Del, if you wanted to mention about some of the other challenges with it being in a conservation area and the properties being, some of them kind of had use as commercial, so it was trying to convert them into residential.
The properties at one time had been used as shops, so we had to have change of use applications for planning. There were also, because of their previous use of the shop, they had large shop front bay windows, which are particularly difficult to deal with because you have very large panes of glass, and there were all sorts of issues with the detailing and making sure we could get the secondary glazing in around the front. And effectively our hands were also tied to a certain extent because we're working in a conservation area, so we couldn't really change the appearance of the properties, which meant that we couldn't do things that we wanted to do, like put in double glazing in some of the front windows. We've got old sash windows which we put secondary glazing in alongside. It's a little bit clunky and awkward to work with sash windows and secondary glazing, so making sure we weren't overstepping any bounds conservation wise was important, and it was a limitation on what we could do, and we had to work within those limitations. Buildings do need maintaining, and some of the properties hadn't been maintained very well for a number of years, and you could push the walls and they would move.
Oh.
So we had to do quite a lot of work structurally.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've been there a long time means that they've stood there for a long time. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll continue to stand there and maintained.
They've been standing up a long time. This has been really, really lovely. It's been really fascinating to hear about the project. Tim's been making a lot of faces that the listener can't see.
For me, the really good bit about this project was it was something that officers pushed, that members are pleased with and senior management are pleased with, because we're actually delivering one of the council's goals. It wasn't something we were given as a task, it's something we did ourselves, and there are other people involved in the process. The time period that Del mentioned, it wasn't just the build time, it was the design time, it was getting planning approval, conservation approval, getting through all the committees, and because we had a united voice going to those committees, things were signed off quickly.
There was some political drive to bringing the properties back into use, and certainly a previous cabinet member for housing was interested in those properties becoming used as accommodation, recognising that they were assets sitting there that weren't being used. The project has been recognised, so it was shortlisted for a national award through Housing Digital. It wasn't successful, but it was good to be shortlisted for a national award. But also in the recent Kent Housing Group Excellence Award, it won within the category of Best Asset Management, so recognition of how well the project was delivered and what it achieved.
Well, that's fantastic that you should say that, because we are going to soon be consulting on our asset management plan, which is a consultation that I run every year with varied number of responses. But if there are listeners who want to find out more about how we dispose of our assets, it's a long document, but it's probably quite interesting if you want to spend the time on it.
And if you want to put in some money towards Del's shelf for all his awards, here's the bank details.
Yeah, link will be on the podcast details.
Link to the Dell's GoFundMe.